This is round 2 of the Legacy 1K side event from the face-to-face tour. Player 1, Mike, we're going to refer to him as Mike. Maestro Mike is a little bit of a handful, and we're also going to say Nick because, as you can tell on his map, LevelUp Games, but Nick LevelUp is quite a mouthful as well. So this is Nick versus Mike. Mike is on ninjas, and Nick is on the tried and true blue-red Murktide. So just straight blue-red. There's no Orcish Bowmasters in this list, so we're still running the 4 Delvers. It's pretty stock from what I can tell. You can double check the deck lists in the description below. So we're taking a look at Mike's hand here. He's keeping Triple Land, Ornithopter, Yuriko, Ingenious Infiltrator, and don't remember what the last card was. So there's a Brazen Boar off the top for Nick. Plays a Misty Rainforest. Japanese Retro Border, very nice. Fetches out a Volcanic Island. Pretty standard for blue-red Murktide. There's a DRC, also known as Dragon's Rage Channeler. Mike going to crack his Misty Rainforest. I think this deck plays a lot of Island, or actually just a lot of basics in general. I don't know if that is a standard choice. So this is Nick's hand, Double Daze, Brainstorm, Brazen Boar, Murktide, Brainstorm, and an Unholy Heat. So very land light. But he has quite a few cantrips. Oh, it's just the Brainstorm. So maybe this Brainstorm can get him out of it. So I think we've top decked a Yuriko from Mike here, who's going to attack with the Ornithopter. After blocks have been declared, he's going to try to Commander Ninjutsu here. So Yuriko, very common commander. Not very common in Legacy. You can do some pretty powerful things here. So Yuriko, I believe whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you do, each opponent loses life equal to that converted mana cost, and then you get to add that card to your hand. So we saw Mike reveal a Ponder off the top, so Nick took 2 damage. I believe Yuriko's a 1/3. So 1 damage from combat, and then 1 damage from the Ponder. Nick gonna fire off this Brainstorm. So Surveil ditches Force of Will. So we draw Bolt, DRC. So still no lands here. So this does look like he is Brainstorm locked, but the DRCs will help him churn through those other cards. There's a Brainstorm off the top for Mike. Oh, I'm gonna get this confused a lot. Maybe I should just say Maestro versus LevelUp Games. Or LevelUp. Plays Polluted Delta for his land per turn. Gonna try to attack in with this Yuriko. Nick has no mana to fire off these lightning bolts. There's the Ornithopter that was ninjutsu'd back to hand. So Mike gonna fire off this Ponder. Let's see, Delta, Orcish Bowmasters, Prismatic Vista. So there is a lot of lands. I wonder if the deck needs a lot of mana to operate. Looks like he's going to draw the Orcish Bowmasters. So he keeps double fetch on top, but he can choose to draw them, at least one, but he can also shuffle them away with the Polluted Delta. So attacking for 1 with this DRC. Mike is going to block. And it looks like, I think this is in the middle, like before damage. So the Bolt is going to target the Yuriko, and DRC's Surveil trigger is going to put a Daze into the graveyard. Yuriko is going to die. Looks like the block is successful. There's no Delirium, so the DRC is still a 1/1 and it does not kill the Ornithopter. Mike untaps, draws for turn. So he's drawing the land that he knows is on the top. So there is another one there. Attacking with the Ornithopter. There is a second Yuriko in the hand. So does he fetch before damage? Or with damage on the stack? Or trigger on the stack? Yeah, sorry, not damage on the stack, but trigger on the stack. The combat damage trigger on the stack. Okay, so we're gonna resolve this Yuriko trigger. Oh no, he's gonna brainstorm still with the trigger on the stack, I believe. He hasn't revealed a card. He's gonna daze the brainstorm. It's gonna trigger surveil. See if we can find a land. It is not a land. Down goes ponder. So we're going to brainstorm the day, or sorry, force of will the daze, and we're gonna allow this brainstorm to resolve. Double fatal push, a ton of lands and an Orcish Bowmasters, along with an Ornithopter. So I think he put double fatal push on top, reveal fatal push, draw one, and ping one. So we can see that the strategy here can be quite powerful for Yuriko. Being able to brainstorm and then putting something like an Ingenious Infiltrator, which I believe is 4 mana, or even a Force of Will if you don't really need it at the moment. You can really easily do quite a bit of damage. It's really unfortunate that we're seeing a lot of lands and 1-drops coming from Mike here. Nick also running into a series of unfortunate events. This is 4 turns without being able to play a second land. Even if he starts finding lands now, I know Delver's like known to be able to operate on very few lands. That's why they play the Wastelands. But it comes to a point where your opponent has so much more action, so many more cantrips, like card advantage, so much like other stuff that even if you're going to start drawing lands, is the Murktide Regent enough? I think one big misplay here is to use the Force of Will. I think you could have just let the days happen. I think this is a really good time to play the Orcish Bowmasters. I know Delver is known to like have a ton of cantrips, and you kind of want to catch them off guard, but you don't want to risk the DRCs getting out of range. So there's a Changeling Outcast, so that does count as a Thopter here, mainly played because it is unblockable. Nick casting Daze, triggering about 2 Surveil. Yeah, so now I believe they are delirious. So I think that might have actually been a misplay here on Mike's part. In response to the Surveil triggers, I think he should have Orcish Bowmastered. Now he has to use Fatal Push on the DRCs. I mean, there's not much else to use them on. Brazen Boar is very good to kind of keep Nick off of Murktide Regent. There's the Volcanic Island that we've been seeing all game. I wonder if Ninjas is capable of playing Wastelands. It seems like there's a very similar strategies. I could be wrong though. I've never really seen the Ninjas deck in action yet. So there's a Retrofitter Foundry off the top. It's really good. It can turn this Changeling Outcast into a 4/4 construct. Unholy Heat on the Yuriko. Yeah, this is why I wasn't a big fan of Force of Willing the Days. I would have preferred to try to use the Force of Will as a protection spell for Yuriko. Untap, draw. There is a Wasteland in Nick's hand. So coming in for 3. Looks like we're gonna block with the Ornithopter, try to make a construct. Is sacrificing a Thopter a cost? There's a bolt on the Ornithopter. There's a Surveil, keeps it on top. So I think that was an illegal play here. Sacrificing a Thopter... Oh, it's... Yeah, so sacrificing a Thopter is actually a cost. I don't think... So Nick should not have been able to bolt the Ornithopter in response to the Retrofitter Foundry. So that, I believe that's a games rule violation. I'm not sure if they, I don't know, I was looking at the rulings, I didn't see if they kind of went back a bit. If that's what happened, I mean, there's nothing that can be done. But please make sure you read all of the cards and don't assume anything, especially when you're in a Comp REL level event. I also apologize for this fly. This fly was buzzing around the entire day. We might see it later on in future matches. Okay, so here's a Murktide Regent from Nick. Mike used Brazen Borrower on the DRC. I don't know if I would have done it so soon, but it would have definitely been a consideration because Nick hadn't been doing something like anything for so long. Although, because he wasn't doing anything for so long, you have to assume that in his hand is just gas. Because he was extremely limited on mana. I think we're doing a search here for an island just to kind of get those small percentage points and thinning out the deck. We have enough lands. I don't think we need more of them. We're at the point where we can start just activating Retrofitter Foundry to make servos and just eventually evolve it. If you can find a second Retrofitter Foundry, that could actually be very good. Because then he could, in one turn, make Thopter chump blockers for the Murktide region. Here's a Ponder. What do we see off the top? Prismatic Vista, Polluted Delta, Brainstorm. So, there looks to be just so many lands. I don't know if... I need to take a look at the deck list, but... I don't know if this is variance or if they're just... if this deck just plays a bunch of lands. Like, the mana curve seems quite low. Other than Ingenious Infiltrator and Yuriko, which you should be ninjutsuing in anyway, this seems like a lot of lands. And 6 basics to count. So he's obviously putting 2 fetch lands on the top. He's gonna shuffle them away, guaranteed. I just don't see any need for having this much mana at this point in the game. So another reason why I'm a big fan of playing the Bowmasters way back to, you know, kind of kill one of the Dragon's Rage Channelers before the Delirium. One, it stops him from surveilling so much, like, in that moment. And 2, you can see that the Orcish Bowmasters are still sitting in his hand, and he's trying to... He's kind of met the he's kind of met the extremes, right? Where he wanted to get maximum value out of it, but by waiting and not deploying the Bowmasters, he's kind of defeated the value and the purpose of it. I mean, we have this common saying, like, all Magic players, it's like, you can't play in fear. And this also applies to, you can't always go for as much value as possible. Sometimes you just want to, you know, put on the board. So he draws a Polluted Delta. I'm surprised that he didn't fetch to get the 2 fetch lands off the top of his library. Not to mention the Orcish Bowmasters also put 2 bodies on the battlefield. So at the time, he would have been threatening like a quite a large board, even though they're small. You're seeing that Nick is pretty like relatively low life. Those early attackers might have been, or the early 1/1s might have just been good enough to like end it. But now we've reached the point where Murktides are just dominating the air. So we're going to try to make a Thopter from this servo. And then we're going to chump block one of the Murktides. We're going to Brazen Bore the Thopter. I'm going to hard cast Force of Will, and then Force of Will the Force of Will. There weren't a ton of misplays, but I would say that there were a bunch of challenging decision choices. Because I don't think he made wrong decisions, but there were alternatives and different timings that I would have played cards. Like, you don't need to Brazen Bore a DRC that's attacking for 3 if you're at 11. Another thing would have been... I don't know the deck list. I haven't looked at it yet. So you guys can, check out the description, check the deck list out. Let me know if it's variance in the comments, or if there's just a lot of lands in the deck. So Mike is going to be on the play. Nick going to be on the draw. Mike player 1, Maestro Mike. Nick player 2, Level Up Games. I wonder if the Ninjas deck has a similar problem to the Delver deck, where sometimes it gets a really aggressive hand, sometimes it gets a very controlling hand. I wonder what kind of hand it would prefer to keep. I wonder if it's like Delver, where it wants to play the tempo game plan, or if it prefers either the aggro route or the control route. It's a very interesting deck. I really wish more people played it. I think it has a lot of potential, especially because it has the ability to play Orcish Bowmasters, which is like one of the best cards in the format right now. So there's a Ponder, Red Elemental Blast, Dragon's Rage Chandler, Wasteland on the top. Going to draw the Red Elemental Blast. I'm not going to crack the fetch here. Draws Polluted Delta. If Mike has the same problem and he just floods out once again, then I'm sure that it's probably... Like, I guess it's only two games, but it's very unlikely that it would happen. So you saw out of the board, we brought in the Back to Basics, which is a pretty good strategy against Delver. And it's probably the reason why he's playing so many basics. It could also be a monetary issue, where you can't really afford Underground Seas. They are very expensive. And if it lets you play sick, crazy, cool cards like Back to Basics, and you can afford to play them, and you have the time to do it, seems good. There's Island, Retrofitter Foundry, and Ingenious Infiltrator. So I think the Ingenious Infiltrator is whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card. Or maybe it's whenever a ninja. So that's pretty good. Can trigger multiple times during combat. I think that's why it's a 4-drop. There's a Swamp. Gonna cast Retrofitter Foundry. Is there a Daze? That's brave. It's probably one of the better cards in your deck, and you run it out against a Daze deck. Delver nonetheless. With no open mana. That's very brave. Being a little cavalier here. Top deck's a Swamp. So Mike continues to draw lands. If he can find a Back to Basics, this will be super good. The problem is, Nick is playing Delver. He has a ton of cards in his hand. You should really be afraid of the Force of Will if you're going to try to go the Back to Basics plan. But I digress. There's no Back to Basics in Mike's hand. I really want to see that card be played. I'm a big fan. Okay, so we're gonna brainstorm here. Trigger Surveil, finds a DRC on the top. Chooses to keep it, draws DRC, Force of Will, Pyroblast. Gonna put Wasteland, Flooded Strand on top. Untaps, draws the Flooded Strand. Yeah, no need for the Wasteland in this matchup. Like, we saw Mike had at minimum 7 basics. Sorry, minimum 6 basics. I think we saw a 7th. There's 2 Surveil triggers off of a Ponder. Gonna bin the Wasteland. You're going to bin the Mishra's Bauble. So I believe that's Delirium, Artifact, Sorcery, Instant, Land. So these DRCs are 3/3s. So this is not where you want to be in this matchup. Facing down 2 3/3 flyers with a grip full of cards in the opponent's hand, and you're only you don't have a threat to start evolving off of this Retrofitter Foundry. It's a really tough situation here. So in for 3 brings Mike down to 16, and I think Nick can just relax. I think he can just cruise off of these DRCs for a while. You just want to prevent Mike from just playing threats. The most threatening thing he can do is cast a creature, right? And generally your creatures are going to be a little bit better than his, because he needs to have bad creatures to get his good creatures into play. And if he's going to cast his good creatures, then you can just keep your counter magic up when he hard casts them. Nick disagrees with me. He's going to try to red Elemental Blast his Brainstorm. Mike gonna crack the Polluted Delta anyway. So there are Underground Seas in the deck, but most likely gonna fetch a basic, just because you can top deck back to basics. Oh, he's gonna go for Swamp. So still end of Nick's turn. Gonna make a servo, untap, draws a Changeling Outcast, so that can quickly become a construct. A bit harder for Delver to deal with. Although it can't block the Dragon's Rage Channelers, it is an effective attacker. Mike can even delay it a little bit and turn it into a Thopter first, and then kind of block 3 points of damage and then transform it into a construct. Wow, there's a third Dragon's Rage Channeler. So this is a very powerful board for Nick. He's leveled up his game indeed. Looks like having mana to cast spells and creatures, it seems like a pretty decent strategy. So he's attacking for 6. One of them has Summoning Sickness. Mike not in a great position. I don't think he has much removal in his hand either. These DRCs kind of got a bit out of control before Orcish Bowmaster came down. He's going to take the 6 damage. Nick showing Pyroblast, I think Brainstorm, Force of Will, and then a 4th card. So we're gonna make another servo here. I'm not sure. Wow, top deck's another Polluted Delta. He is ice cold right now. So attacking with the team. There's a Yuriko in the hand. Gonna try to get an extra card here, I think. Wow, he chooses not to return the Changeling Outcast. Okay, we're gonna cast Brainstorm, 3 Surveil triggers. There's a Force of Will in the bin, Force of Negation in the bin, Murktide Regent, yep, keep the Murktide Regent and just dumped a bunch of spells into the graveyard. Resolve the Brainstorm to draw the Murktide, draw a Ponder, draw Delver. That is a lot of Force of Wills, and that is a lot of blue fodder that he's going to pitch. Okay. This Pyroblast can get rid of this Yuriko. There's an Orcish Bowmasters, a little bit too late. Oh, is it whenever a ninja deals damage it triggers? Wow. Okay, so that's why you didn't bounce the Changeling out, or Changeling Outcast, to get an extra Yuriko trigger. Okay. It's a pretty sound strategy. He can still turn it into a defender if he needs to, but it's most likely going to be the servo. So it looks like there's going to be a Murktide here. Yeah, just attack first. I don't think you really need to cast the Murktide. You have lethal on board. Gonna make a Thopter. Block the Dragon's Rage Channeler. Casting Ponder, so we're surveilling Delver, Murktide, and Polluted Delta away. Resolve the Ponder, reveals Ponder, Delver, and Red Elemental Blast. Gonna keep them. Gonna cast another Ponder. So I think he's looking for Lightning Bolt. I'm not... Yeah, I think he's trying to end the game right here and now. There's an Orcish Bowmaster. I think like... Yeah, it could become problematic. I guess that is a okay thing to force. Not my favorite, but if you're trying to find a Lightning Bolt to end the game and you want to keep digging, I don't know why he would be in such a rush though. He's in such a dominant position. Unless Yuriko flips into something insane. But you have a Pyroblast to kill the Yuriko. Yeah, so I guess we're just playing, like, to have fun. It's definitely not optimal here. There's a Brotherhood's End off the top. And he finds the Lightning Bolt! Okay, Lightning Bolt for game. I was wrong. There should be 3 Surveil triggers. There's a Force of Will. Goes to 1. I mean, it buys him 1 turn, but to do 11 points of damage and not die on the backswing, he draws a second Retrofitter Foundry. That's not gonna do it. Attacks for 2, flips, reveals Changeling Outcast, reveals Ornithopter. This is an unfortunate showing for, I think, the Ninjas deck. It's a very awkward place. You want to have a lot of high converted mana cost cards to deal a lot of damage with Yuriko. However, you are like almost like a very similar tempo, not really similar, but you are kind of a tempo strategy, and you want to play low mana curve. I guess that's where your brainstorms shine, where if you draw into your big things later, you can brainstorm them in and then Yuriko people. But if you draw those cards early and you're playing against a fast deck, then it's kind of rough. I'm wondering if Force of Will is the biggest converted mana cost card in the deck. But yeah. Nick takes it over Mike in 2. We will see you guys for round 3.